Hi everybody, hi Gemini, this is Lee at Fresh Astrology, and we have, as much as you wouldn't think that Raleigh, North Carolina, if you know anything about where Raleigh, North Carolina is, as much as you wouldn't think that we would have hurricanes one after the other, we are having one right now after we just experienced one before now. So you'll see blinking lights, hopefully this won't go off, but blinking lights, lots of wind, but I think we're on the back end of the storm. The eye wall went over a little while ago, which means it was very calm, and I felt, I don't know, do people just fall for it every time? I was like, oh look, the storm's over, and then like even worse, the back end of the eye wall, it's even stronger, and the wind is much worse. So anyway, I fell for it. Even though I know a lot about hurricanes, I fell for it. So you may see lots of blinking lights, and I may glance out the window if there's especially a strong gust, because tornadoes can crop up. It's just a part of being in this region. Tornadoes can crop up. So anyway, here we are. Welcome. So Gemini, and then you may see this funny thing on my thumb. I burned my hand really badly on a pan, and so this is my homemade, not tourniquet, but bandage. So just in case you don't know, when you get burned, the first thing you want to do is get that burn into something colder than the air that you're in, and just keep it in the cold for, depending on how bad the burn is, 10 to 30 minutes, and even longer if the burn's really bad. One time I was in Mexico, I was much younger, I was on a motorcycle and I burned my leg on the motorcycle, as one can, and just like leapt off the motorcycle and ran into over a field, over a fence, and got into the ocean and stood there for a long time. It was a really bad burn, and if I hadn't been going back the next day to the States, I probably would have gone to the hospital with it, but I just wanted to go back home and have it treated. But getting it cold is the first thing, and so there's that. And then some things that help, definitely aloe. I had food grade aloe in my refrigerator, so this paper towel is coated in wet with food grade aloe, and then also honey is good for a burn. So that's what this is. So moving on, we are looking at the final quarter, the final 3 months of 2018. My schedule is just really packed, and I don't want to leave Fresh Astrology entirely. In fact, I have a whole new idea for how to approach it so that I can combine some of what I'm doing in my coaching world with astrology, because for me, in doing this, it's how can I serve you best? And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of astrologers on YouTube and online. Even on YouTube, there are just hundreds and hundreds. So I don't think there's any shortage of people doing these monthly forecasts. And I don't feel, when I see the results people get from coaching and from the events we do, it's so much more profound than getting a reading. A reading is powerful and it's very validating, and it can be healing. So I'm not discounting astrology, but anyway, I'm got to think about how to change up what I'm doing here because of my schedule. So that's why we're doing the last quarter, and I may just do quarterly. I had told my business partners at Tribe, I just don't know if I can do Fresh Astrology anymore, and they were like, oh no, don't give up, just maybe do quarterly, so you can, if you still want these, you can thank them. So they suggested that, and then I started thinking of some other ways I could bring the coaching and astrology together, but it may mean I'm not doing monthlies at all. Or forecasting the same way. So anyway, let's take a look, Gemini. We're in October now as I do this, and what we have at the beginning is a dynamic between Uranus retrograde and Venus retrograde. They are in opposition, And this cuts across your chart. So both planets are right on the cusp between signs. So Uranus is on the cusp between Aries and Taurus, right? And Venus is on the cusp between Libra and Scorpio. So on one end, more the Libra Scorpio end, and also the way it hits your chart, it's more likely that this is true as well. This has more to do with the people in your life and something to do with how you approach your relationships with the people in your life, including, in this case, kids and people you work with. It's time to review and take a step back and rework how you look at your relationships with your children and with the people at work, and maybe your health too. I know your health is not a person, although it is. It's your physical body person. But you need to take a step back here and rethink something about work, maybe about your relationships at work. And the goal with Venus, and the goal, since it's also touching Libra, is harmony and fairness, justice. That's the higher side of Venus and Libra. What's going on beneath the surface, and why this may be going backward a little, what's going on beneath the surface is Scorpio and the lower side of Libra and the lower side of Venus. So the lower side of those energies are very jealous. The green-eyed monster is there right now. And this could be jealousy around a romantic partner. It could be jealousy even toward a child. Sometimes people are jealous of a child. Let's not demonize that, but it can happen. And you need to, the best thing to deal with these lower energies is awareness. Notice, I'll put out the classic example. There's a father-son dynamic and a mother-daughter dynamic where either the father is usually trying to live through the son and wants the son to kind of do things he never did. Sometimes mothers want that too. But sometimes on these lower side of the energies, a mother may, as a daughter gets older and older and into teenage years, start feeling competitive with. It can happen. And it's on a spectrum of normal. It's very normal. But there's a spectrum over here where it's just a little and you're surprised that you feel that way, to a lot where a very narcissistic parent might try to kind of get into a game of one-upsmanship with her own daughter. And that can be going on. And the best thing is awareness. Be honest with yourself. If you're the kind of person who wants to be introspective, notice what it is you could be doing. It may not be that at all. It may be something else in your life, but this is one possibility. But definitely one could be jealous in a relationship, be it a friend or even a romantic partner. There could be some jealousy here. There may be somebody making you jealous. There could be a triangle of some sort. And there's that. There's also the side of both sort of the negative side of Libra and Venus, and the negative side of Scorpio is the idea of retaliation and getting back at somebody. And maybe in a subversive kind of way with the retrograde and with the fact that it's in Scorpio. There could be some subversive way of just because you can, kind of getting back at someone. So really what I would say to that, and maybe it's not so much you're doing it, but someone around you, because Venus could be a person in your life who's behaving that way, where they're doing something a little underhanded because they can and get away with it. and you may not see it as clearly, but I think with this Uranus going back and forth over the area of your chart that has to do with your awareness and subconscious and your mind, the light bulb may be going on, and you may start to see a little of something that's been very hard to see, like, because maybe you really love this person. After all, they're represented by Venus, and after all, they're still cruising around this area to do with Libra. And so this may be a person that's very dear to you who may have some ulterior motives, not because they're bad. Again, we're talking about normal human behavior, and sometimes normal, nice people are a little subversive and a little strategic and a little retaliatory, just a little. And you know, we all can do this at times in our lives. So it's not like I'm talking about some very, like something really out of hand and really obnoxious and really mean. It could just be very subtle. And you may, if you hadn't been able to see it before, this may be a time when the light bulb starts to flicker, and you see that this person does have this potential to do this, to be a little, like, seem like Venus on the surface, but kind of be sticking it to people a little here and there, and a little retaliatory. So, or jealous. Somebody could just, you don't always see it with this person. This person can be a little jealous. And you just, it's really just an awareness. That doesn't mean, now, in a few, very few cases, this could be like way out of hand. Somebody could be really acting up and really just like a bull in a china shop. But I think in most cases it's quite subtle. And so it's not like it's a big deal, but I think you have a hard time seeing it. And I think you're adjusting to, and it may be more than one person you're dealing with here, because the opposition also goes to Mercury. So there may be more than one person, and then also the fact that you've got Jupiter here in the 6th house moving with Mercury over your descendant at the end of this month. There's an expansion of relationships and discussions, and you know, I'm kind of trying to dig into the subtle meanings, but I don't mean to suggest that this is all negative. You do have Jupiter in the 6th house, so something very positive is actually happening in the zone of your health and the zone of relationships around work and just friendships in general. There's a lot of positivity here, and there's an expansion of friendships, an expansion of relationships. There is some emotion, though. There is emotion going on, and it's a part of life. But just know that there is an expansion of emotion, and it's normal. It shouldn't be marginalized or made to be pathological. Don't pathologize. Some of this stuff is just the human condition, and I think what's happening with Uranus dipping in and out of your mind, in the area of your mind and your awareness, is how to cope and process what's happening here. And you're also gearing up for a big transit of Jupiter, and let's just go on into November. Let me look up at the top. There's some travel indicated in October. I think a lot of you are traveling or have some travels in October or planning to travel. And then we get into November, and Jupiter goes into your 7th house of relationships. So there's this big expansion in the area of relationships and collaborations and affiliations, and maybe a client base is expanded greatly. and then you have this Mercury retrograde, and then you have the Sun with Jupiter in your 7th house. So there's a lot happening here. So it still looks, even when we get into November, all the way through the month, like there's this need for discussion and rethinking. It could have to do with work, rethinking who your client is, having conversations where you're trying to seal the deal and get the sale. It could be that kind of collaboration, or partnering with somebody so that they become a customer. It can also be with a business partner, and it could be that some of you are intensifying relationships, getting engaged, getting married, meeting people you could have a long-term relationship with. For Geminis who've been in a long-term relationship and it's been rocky, this can be a time when things really expand and blow out of control. And the benefit to that is, because Jupiter, even when it's behaving in this fashion where it's blowing up something negative, it is trying to make something positive happen. And there's never any particular right answer about what the right thing is. There's no clear right thing. Sometimes the right thing is to get divorced. Sometimes the right thing is to go to couples therapy. Sometimes the right thing is to just work really hard on recognizing how wonderful your partner is and how lucky you are to be in this relationship, even though there's some times where you just want to pull out your hair. So I don't know what it is for you, and you're going to have to figure that out. You've got a whole year to figure that out. Is this the best partnership for you? Things may get worse before they get better, or it could become clear it's just not going to work. Or it could become clear that you just want to do this for the rest of your life and you want to get married, or the equivalent, in a business sense, you want to stay partners and you're kind of in a honeymoon phase, or prolonged honeymoon phase, and that's going to be very lucrative. So lots of different possibilities for Geminis, and it just depends. It's not vague, it's just that there's so many, there are millions of you, and each planet has a whole variety, far more meaning than we can ever get to in one of these readings, and each sign has a lot of variety around the meaning and the way we read it. And then you put it together with how things line up with other things, and it just gets very complex, and it's very personalized. That's why two Geminis born on the same day don't have the same exact lives, because there's so much variability here. So you've got to think about it for yourself. Like, what do you want? I was talking to Taurus and advising that maybe Taurus think about what does Taurus want from a relationship. That could be a business relationship or a love relationship. It might do you some good too to think about what is it you want from your relationships. You could write out each person, each company or entity, and what do you want from it? How do you want it to feel? What do you need it to do for you? What do you need to do for it? How can you change to, maybe alter things, alter the dynamic? How can you make changes? Not always about the other person changing, but it is good to know, to be aware what your expectations are. Sometimes when we're listing out what our expectations are, it becomes clear after expectation number 20 or 30 that maybe we have a lot of expectations. And maybe we have high expectations. And is it realistic for any partnership, be it business or love, to fulfill all those expectations? And you might get a window into that part of yourself that has many expectations. And sometimes when we see all these expectations, what we can do is not give up on ever getting whatever that is, but there are a lot of things we can do for ourselves. And once we realize we have that power, it's very empowering, because there's so much in your life you can actually take care of yourself. So let's give an example. If you want one of your work colleagues to be more communicative, if you really stop to think about it and get honest with yourself, maybe you're expecting them to do all the work of communicating. Why do you want them to be more communicative? Is it because there's this silence? Could you not break that silence? And the same could be said in a love relationship. You want somebody you're in love with to talk more or say something, and maybe you're not. Maybe you're the one who's like freezing them out. Sometimes we have these expectations when really we're the ones. Or we could just listen to ourselves or talk to ourselves through a journal and have that conversation with ourselves. If communication's the issue, that's just one issue. But do a little work here, because you're going to have these energies for a while, and if you want your relationships to thrive and survive, it will be necessary to analyze yourself, because you do have both Pluto and Saturn in your 8th house of depth psychology, and you have Uranus kind of still flirting with your 12th house of the psyche, the mind, the health of the mind, and it will eventually dive in there and stay in there for quite some time. And so it is looking like one of your karmic tasks with all this planetary action is to understand yourself and to get to know yourself better, so that you can improve your life, really improve the quality of your relationships in this case. There's a lot of emphasis on money and work as well. Let's take a look at that. So we were already talking about work relationships and work. Some of you may be hiring someone new, or a new colleague could be coming in, or that new partnership we were talking about, or just new friends. They could be work friends or just friends, but there's also that suggestion of work and a lot of stuff going on at work and work expansion. And then at the top of your chart, you've got Mars moving over your midheaven into your 10th house, lining up with Neptune. And so it's a big time for dreaming and dreaming about the money you want. Often Neptune, kind of a lesser known or talked about meaning for Neptune is money and the management of money. So your finances are implicated here, and Mars comes in and energizes you to dream big, not just in what your career will be and how far you can take your career, but also financially to dream big. It's a good time for that in November and December. And really, this whole phase of your life is kind of for this. There's something you need to heal. Let me think about the best way to say this. There's something you need to heal. It may go back to childhood with a parent and some kind of dynamic with a parent. It has to do with authority and authority figures. So there's something to be healed around a parent who was very authoritarian, the stronger parent, who maybe yielded or wielded, he didn't yield at all, but wielded more authority, wielded like their control a little bit more. And sometimes with parents, it's hard to choose which one that would be if they were both really strong that way. But there's some, and maybe it is around both of them. But there's some kind of issue around authority figures that you're healing or need to heal. So that could be a part of your introspection. You know, what patterns are playing out at work and in your relationships that have to do with parental issues and how you had to be as a child. You know, are you carrying some kind of dynamic from childhood in that maybe could be healed and cleared? So just something to think about. As for December, still got that Jupiter firmly, like when Jupiter enters a sign, it goes quickly. It's like already moving toward the middle of Sagittarius in your house of relationships. So things are moving. I think December, it feels like things are moving so fast. And then you have Mercury in there. Mercury feels fast. And Venus is moving forward, and it's going to be meeting the point where Jupiter was at the beginning of the quarter. And so there's a little bit of what was going on in October. Maybe it could have been a big focus on a lot of work. It would seem that it's really paying off by the end of December. So if you had a lot of work on your plate in October and November, it's paying off. And it's not just paying off in terms of money, it's paying off in terms of relationships. So any hard work you did, maybe on yourself, or maybe just hard work. I'm trying to think of like examples. Like, let's say you have a job, you work for someone else, and you just worked your tail off in the last quarter, and I would think it would be noticed and rewarded, and there's this nice Venusian Venus quality. People really appreciate and value. Venus can symbolize value your effort, and maybe your generous spirit. You know, if you embodied Jupiter during that final quarter, and you were very magnanimous and worked hard, and it just came in like Jupiter. And also Jupiter has a lot of wisdom, knowledge, knows how to find knowledge and gain wisdom for his or herself. If you behaved in any way like Jupiter or like Venus, hopefully not Venus retrograde so much, but it seems like things get turned around and righted somehow. So if things were going off, things come back around and feel better. There's a focus on finance toward the end of the year, but this is true every year for you. You're looking at this. It's just a time of year when you reflect and you go in and you look at your finances. You tend to do a little more self-reflection at this time. It's just normal. So you may not even be aware of it. Your energy turns from that career trajectory to the future, and also to the area of networking and friends. I get the feeling that you're just meeting lots of people, networking, and your relationships are more highlighted at this particular time of your life. Something about your future plans change. So something that you thought you knew what you were doing in some arena, that maybe had to do with health, kids, your daily schedule, something changes around scheduling, work, kids, friends, future plans, the way you saw the future. Something changes. It's the rethink going on that's still going on with Uranus. So you may not actually know what the change will become, but you know that you're changing your mind around something, and that's okay. Just seeing if there's anything else we want to add. There is a shift from this area of the third house, communications, learning small tasks, coming up to speed with stuff that has to do with writing, the internet, social media. There's a shift by the end of the year where it's really about earning money. So whereas before it was about learning, prepping, getting ready, messaging, getting acclimated to equipment maybe, or social media, or maybe you were finishing up a writing project, then it firmly becomes about, at the end of the year, making money. So let's end on that note, and enjoy this last quarter of the year. Take care.